Good day. I'm very excited today. I've got two beautiful people that's working for God, and they've got beautiful hearts, and I asked them to have an interview. So bear with us. We're not going to reveal them. We're going to keep them protected. Why did you leave Lebanon?
Well, why don't I share the most recent thing?
Yes.
So I was on a visit recently in Syria, in the capital city of Damascus, and we were praying with some local intercessors. And the Lord had been giving us a lot of pictures in advance of our trip and during our trip about how He wants to bring the river of life, to Syria.
Just quickly, how many people were praying? How many people of Syria were there?
So, from the Syrian side, we had 3 people with us.
Yes.
And then it was myself and 2 others. So we were 6 people total.
So, a human number. Perfect. So you were not even a big crowd. Good.
No. And so we were able to go to a particular location in the city and to pray. And we're praying into this theme. But then one of the things that we discovered was that actually the drinking water to the city was starting to be rationed, because there was some kind of blockage in the main source that goes into the city. And so we were praying, asking for things to be exposed and for things to be removed that are preventing the life that God wants to bring to Syria.
Can I ask you, did you stand at that place, or were you just walking in that area? Where did you receive water? Did you have water? Give me some detail.
Yeah, so we were just standing in an area that allowed us to kind of have a good panoramic view of the city. We didn't go to that water source because it would be difficult to get there.
Okay.
But one of our group had just a bottle of drinking water, and as we were praying, we were just kind of, as a prophetic act, just kind of sprinkling the water. Just kind of as a symbol about this life that the Lord wants to bring and the flourishing that He wants to bring to the country. And then we discovered the next day that actually in the location where the main water source that comes into the city that provides the drinking water for most people, that there was actually a small earthquake. And that earthquake caused whatever was blocking caused things to be moved, and then all of a sudden the water started flowing much more freely into the city. And so then
Your prayers were like the disciples in Acts 4. When they prayed, there was also an earthquake.
Yeah, the amazing thing is that at the time we personally didn't feel anything. We didn't notice an earthquake. It was something that we discovered afterwards.
Wow, that's such an amazing, amazing testimony. You are like the disciples. Where you put your foot down, there's earthquakes, things happen. That's amazing. Okay, yes, let's go on. Otherwise, I'm going to ask questions all day.
Yeah, earlier this year, we were praying for the country of Iran with a large group of intercessors. There was between 700 and 800 of us.
Wow, okay, that's a big group.
Yeah, and we spent an hour and a half to 2 hours just really seeking the Lord's heart and praying for Iran. Within 20 minutes of us finishing that time of prayer, there was a 5.0 earthquake in Iran, so strong enough to be felt.
Wow.
Weak enough that there was no damage, and we just knew that was a sign from the Lord that He was going to shake things up.
You didn't jump up and down to cause the earthquake. You just prayed.
Yeah, and we were not in Iran praying, so yes.
Wow, that's amazing. It just shows you that distance is no problem with God.
Yeah.
Yeah.
How do you gather a group of people like that?
I mean, that gathering, good friends of ours, they started a gathering to pray for the Muslim world. And this was roughly about 20 years ago. And It was just basically a small group of people, I think maybe somewhere between 20 and 30 people, that were living in the Muslim world and were just really frustrated that they weren't seeing the kinds of breakthrough that they all wanted to see. And so, but it then resulted in them actually starting to get stirred to pray on a regular basis. And so this has been happening mostly on an annual basis for the last 20 years. And as time has gone on, the numbers have increased. And so now, if you add in the children, like you can get maybe 1,000 people praying for the Muslim world. And obviously, in the last 20 years particularly, there have been significant shifts in the Muslim world.
So the children are also praying.
Yes.
Yes, there's a parallel children's program running, but it's not babysitting and it's not Sunday school. It is like children interceding for the same things the adults are interceding for.
Mm-hmm.
That is so good to hear, because so often we put the children aside and then we wonder why they don't want to worship God.
Yeah. And so like this particular, like the Iran time, for example, during the conference, we have these times, we call them harp and bowl. And it's a combination of like we're worshiping the Lord, and we're praying and interceding at the same time, and it's kind of like a dance between the two.
Yes.
But when we have those times, we bring in the teenagers.
Wow.
They come and join us for that part of our program. But then, in addition to that, they also separately, along with some of the younger kids, they also have their own harp and bowl times to pray for different parts of the Muslim world.
That is so good to hear, because so often churches just put the children aside to go and play or just to have a Bible story, but you actually teach the children how to pray. And I wish we can have that in more churches, really teaching the children to pray, to have a heart. And that sounds so beautiful.
Yeah, our friend always says there's no junior Holy Spirit.
No wonder the children want to go back and follow their parents' footsteps, because they are actually part of the prayer group.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. There's a number of people actually involved who are now, maybe in their 20s, who years ago when they were children, their parents were taking them along to this prayer conference in particular, and so they've really caught the prayer bug. So
it's amazing. I really want to cry just to think about it, because we've lost a whole generation of children that cannot pray. And you are teaching the children to pray in the last 20 years. And you've grown to a few people up to 1,000. This is so amazing. And just prayer and worship.
Yeah, really. Yeah,
Wow.
I mean, when we get together, there's a lot of planning, obviously. But kind of plan A is let's get people into the presence of the Lord. And so, which means that we need to be willing that the plan gets changed. The things that we thought we were going to do, sometimes those things might change. We've got like 10 things that we thought we would do, and maybe in the end we only do 2 of them. But it's because the Lord has highlighted a particular thing.
Yeah, and that specific prayer time for Iran was definitely like that. Like there was a very planned prayer program, and about 5 minutes into the prayer time, the program was gone and we were just following the Spirit.
Wow. You're giving God actually the time to step in. I've heard of a pastor that said he's too afraid to let that happen because he's going to lose control. But by you losing control, you actually caused breakthroughs in those areas.
Well, and I think as well, like just having, like there's structures in place, like there are, like there's a group of people that would be kind of focusing on discernment. If people are getting impressions from the Lord, because especially with a number like 800 people, I mean, how are you going to filter it? So then, we have a system where people would, if they sense they're getting a word from the Lord, a picture, whatever it may be, they can actually go to someone who's sitting at a computer and they'll just kind of type up the impression that they've got. Wow. And then the discernment table is receiving this, kind of like a Google Doc that's live. And the discernment table is praying and just noticing the things that are coming in. And so there's a communication flow between those that are leading the meeting, those that are discerning, and then the people, like the regular people, like kind of on the floor, let's say.
Yes, it's a very organized, out of control.
Organized, out of control. I love that. But the one word that I hear there is communication. Communication. And that is so important. It's just not one person communicating. It's a whole group of people communicating, hearing from God, communicating with one another. And it was on one of those conferences that you've actually had that impression to move? Is that right?
No, we were running a smaller, similar conference in Lebanon.
Okay.
Do you want to tell this? So, I mean, we've been in Lebanon for several years. We're there as the Hamas attack of Israel happened and as the Gaza war was brewing. And so we were there through all the stages of increased war activity. And then it was September 17th, 2004, when the Israelis detonated Hezbollah's pagers. I'm sure most people remember that.
Yeah, that was a big one.
Yes, that was a big one. And leading up to that, we had really felt just a deep sense from the Lord, stay. And we were planning a prayer conference in country with about 110 people that was due to start a few days after the pager explosion. Sure. And when those pagers went off, we knew that the scale of the war had changed. And we asked the Lord, what do we do? And the same word, stay.
The communication network was destroyed of the enemy, but you heard from God to stay. Wow.
So I mean, as well, another factor that was important in it was that whenever things were starting to really escalate in Lebanon, the ability to leave the country was starting to become very difficult, just because land borders with Syria and with Israel. Obviously, you can't go to Israel from Lebanon, and then of course you've got the airport.
And the land border to Syria, you needed special permission to be allowed access into Syria, and that permission was not easy to come by.
And your parents' hearts were okay with God. You say we have to stay. How did you make that? How did you stay calm?
Yeah, so I mean, obviously things over the last number of years in Lebanon, there's been a series of crises. But anyway, we prayed, and in particular, the thing the Lord had highlighted was the importance of this conference that we were going to help organize. The original idea of the conference was there was going to be a couple of speakers coming in, and we're going to be talking a lot about discipleship and church planting issues. And of course, there was going to be some time set aside for worship and prayer, but that wasn't the exclusive focus of the conference. But we really sensed that we still needed to do this and that we needed to increase the focus on prayer. And then in the end, as things were escalating, the speakers from outside were no longer able to come anyway.
All flights were canceled.
And so together with some of the other organizers, as we prayed, we sensed, we still need to get God's people together. But this time we need to really spend time in prayer together.
Wow. Prayer. Communication with God the whole time.
Yeah. Yeah. So then when we had the conference, we pivoted, a lot more worship and prayer happening.
And the conference was held in a mountainous area outside of Beirut. So we were about 45 minutes from the capital. Yeah.
Okay.
And
it's not that far.
No. And then during the conference, as we were praying, and we really did sense the Lord was starting to highlight that it was time for the leadership of Hezbollah, which is one of the main groups in Lebanon that has been very aggressive against Israel. That it was time for these people to be removed. And we're not the type of people that just kind of casually pray for leaders to be removed.
I like that word, casually pray. I think too many people are casually praying.
Yeah. So, but then I think it was the Saturday night. It was the 27th. Friday night. Okay, 27th of September, I believe. Yes. And then there was a huge
There was an
attack.
extraordinarily loud explosion that we could hear.
Yeah.
Wow.
Basically, they'd kind of done this huge like bunker bomb, and they took out the leader of Hezbollah, Hassan Nasrallah.
Wow.
But all of us, we were all together up in the mountains, so we could hear this thing in the distance. But
Okay.
had we been, most of us, would have been in the Beirut area,
Okay.
and had we been there, it would have been a very traumatic experience to go through.
We would have been 1.5 miles from the blast site.
Wow, that's in the area. Wow. And God separated you. He kept you safe in the mountain.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
How beautiful.
And so then following this, we finished out the conference.
Well, we knew when Nasrallah was assassinated that we were now in full-scale war with Israel.
Okay. So that realization started to come in.
Yes, and we were like, and yet we knew that the Lord wanted us to continue all day Saturday's prayer and most of Sunday's prayer as planned.
How did you balance yourself in that, knowing something happened and you still have to go along? How did you put yourself in Christ?
I mean, I think we felt the peace of the Lord.
Okay.
That this, like he had made it very clear to my wife that whenever we need to get out, he'll get us out.
Yeah, he had told me a year earlier when we were out of country and things were escalating. We were just out for 2 weeks, and we were praying about returning, and he said, "I will get you out on time."
That is something to hold on to and to say, God, I'm going to trust you on that, because so often people hear a word like that and they look at the things around them and they struggle. How did you hold on to that word?
Yeah, I mean, you face. Here's the thing, because it's going to be tested. So you're facing these issues. So we just keep going back to prayer.
But also, it was such a clear word, and that was when we were actually, when we were praying, I was like, Lord, I need a clear word, and I need to know it's from you. So no matter what happens in the days ahead, we can stand on this. So, I mean, I will confess, the night that Nasrallah was assassinated, we all very quickly got onto Expedia.com and tried to book flights out of Lebanon.
Yes.
The earliest flight we could get was 12 or 13 days later.
Wow.
So we booked those tickets and continued with the prayer conference, but with the reality of we're going to need to go home, and we're going to be 1 to 2 miles from the intense bombing of Beirut.
Wow. And to hold on to that word, knowing what's happening, takes a lot of rest in God. Or what else was there?
It was literally the peace that passes understanding. It didn't make sense. I have 3 children, and I'm a chicken. I don't love bombs.
So you were a chicken running into the hatch, like Jesus said, you have to get in him because he's the door.
Yeah. And we had people that are close to us from our home countries communicating with us and saying hey, you need to get out, because obviously people are watching the news.
And they've been telling us to get out since the pager attacks. And we're at what point do we tell them that, technically we're stuck?
Yeah. And really, the situation, the situation in Lebanon from the October 2023 attacks, as Hamas against Israelis, from that point on, things, because in Lebanon were just increasing, escalating. And it was kind of like a scenario of the frog in the pot of water that's gradually getting hotter.
Yes.
Where you could get very complacent and just oh well, and it's you just kind of get used to the fact that it's there's some bombs happened over here and there's some jets flying over there. You just kind of get used to it. But obviously, so it was really important for us, just as we're praying, to kind of really honestly surrender our will, because in some ways, like, making the decision to, some people stay just out of stubbornness, not because the Lord's given them peace to stay. They're basically, they feel as if, oh, I'm going to be a failure. I'm going to appear to be, unfaithful or something like that if I'm not willing to endure this trial. So it's really important to just really pray and just keep asking the Lord, surrendering our will to Him. What should we do here? But you care about our kids, so we know, like, just to have that kind of sense of confirmation, and that you just got to keep going back to Him.
We're going to stop this today at this point. They surrendered their will to God. They had a clear word from God, and they surrendered to God. Can you surrender to God in situations like that? It's so easy to run away. Next week, we will look at what happened after this, because it's so important to hear the full story and so many testimonies. That's more. Can you pray? Can you hear? How's your communication with God? See you next week.